Have you ever felt invisible, even in a crowded room? Ever caught yourself scrolling on your phone, pretending not to feel the weight of your own stillness? What if being alone wasn't a disease to fix, but a deep well of creativity, clarity, and peace? That's The Pulse of the Art of Being Alone by Renuka Gavrani, a gently liberating guide that will teach you to turn loneliness into your greatest ally. So let's dive in together. If you've ever felt uneasy with your own company, or maybe yearned to learn how to be your own best friend, this one's for you. Renuka Gavrani roots her wisdom not in abstract studies but lived experience. She frames loneliness not as a problem to solve, but a state to reframe. We're going to walk through her two-part journey. First, transforming loneliness into solitude, and then transforming that solitude into personal growth. We've all seen those beautifully edited Instagram posts. A girl sipping coffee alone by the window, a man wandering down a quiet beach with headphones in, captions like, "Loving my own company." From a distance, it looks peaceful, even enviable. But Gavrani warns us not to confuse the image with the reality. Behind many of those moments, she explains, is a silent ache. The hope that someone will notice, the secret longing for a text, a call, or just someone to say, "I'm here." She says the deepest loneliness isn't about the space around you. It's about the absence within you, the feeling of not having yourself as company. That line is powerful. It reminds us that loneliness doesn't come from empty rooms or long nights. It comes from the disconnection we carry inside. When you're out of sync with yourself, no amount of people around you will fix that emptiness. Gavrani pushes us to see the difference. Loneliness is the cage, but solitude is the freedom. Loneliness says, you're not enough. You need others to complete you. Solitude says, you are whole, and from that wholeness, you can choose to share yourself. So the first step, she argues, is honesty. Stop dressing loneliness up in pretty clothes. Admit when it hurts. Admit when it stings. Because only then can you start turning it into something richer. In this chapter, Gavrani gets deeply personal. She shares memories of her teenage years, desperately wanting to fit in, always bending her words and interests just to be accepted. She remembers laughing at jokes she didn't find funny, pretending to like music she didn't care about, even staying quiet when she disagreed, just so people wouldn't think she was difficult. When you hide your real self long enough, the people around you may like you, but they don't really know you. And that kind of acceptance feels hollow. By college, Gavrani faced a crossroads. Some friendships she thought were unbreakable cracked apart when she started standing up for herself. Others faded away when she stopped pretending. It hurt because letting go of people, even unhealthy ones, always does. But she calls it one of the most liberating choices of her life. She writes that walking away from false belonging was her first real act of courage. It wasn't isolation, it was radical self-respect. By choosing solitude over fake connection, she finally gave herself permission to breathe as who she really was. And in that breathing space, she found clarity. She discovered that being alone wasn't about emptiness. It was about space. Space to think, to feel, to rebuild her identity without masks. The lesson here is sharp. Solitude is not rejection. It's not a punishment. Sometimes it's simply the most honest decision we can make for ourselves. Imagine this. You put your phone face down, close your laptop, and instead of rushing to fill the silence with noise, TV, scrolling, music, you just sit, maybe on your terrace at sunset, or maybe in your room with the window cracked open, listening to the faint sounds of life outside. For the first few minutes, it feels strange. Your mind fidgets. You reach for your phone out of habit. But if you resist, just for a little while, you start to notice something unexpected. The sky changing colors, the breeze brushing against your skin, your breath slowing down. Renuka Gavrani says this is the doorway into solitude. At first, it feels like nothing is happening, but gradually the noise in your head begins to settle. The endless loop of what if, what next, what do they think of me, fades, and what's left is something most of us rarely touch: quietness. She recalls her own turning point, evenings when she'd sit on her rooftop, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. No music, no notebook, just stillness. She admits it wasn't comfortable at first. Her thoughts raced, loneliness whispered. But over time, that stillness became her sanctuary, a place where she could simply exist without explanation. She echoes Blaise Pascal's timeless words, "All of man's problems stem from his inability to sit quietly alone in a room." And she reframes it, not as a curse, but as a challenge worth taking up. Because once you learn to sit with yourself, you're no longer afraid of silence. Gavrani argues, solitude isn't about escaping the world. It's about meeting yourself fully without distraction. And when you do that, when you start to enjoy your own company, loneliness loses its grip. As she beautifully puts it, isolation ends where solitude begins. We live in a world that sells self-care as spa days, scented candles, or expensive retreats. Gavrani isn't against any of that, but she insists self-care is simpler, deeper, and less glamorous than Instagram makes it seem. Real self-care is solitude. Why? Because solitude is where you recharge emotionally. It's not pampering, it's nourishment. The same way food fuels your body, solitude fuels your mind and soul. She tells a story of how she once felt completely drained, running from classes to assignments, from friends to family obligations, never pausing for herself. She reached a breaking point one evening and simply shut her door. She sat on the floor, leaned against her bed, and just breathed. 10 minutes of silence. No pressure to be productive. No pressure to smile for anyone. She describes it as the first time in weeks she felt her shoulders unclench. And here's the lesson. Solitude doesn't demand a cabin in the woods or a meditation retreat brochure. You can start today, right now, wherever you are. 5 minutes of conscious quiet. 5 minutes of not checking notifications, not reacting, just existing. Think of it like plugging your phone into the charger. The battery doesn't argue, it doesn't overthink, it just receives. That's what solitude does for us. It recharges us so we can step back into the noise of life with a steadier heart. One of the most beautiful lessons Gavrani highlights is emotional independence. Let's break that down. Emotional independence doesn't mean cutting people off or pretending you don't need anyone. It doesn't mean becoming a lone wolf. Instead, it means learning to stand in your own integrity, your own truth, even when no one is around to applaud you or validate you. She shares a story of a young entrepreneur who told her how carving out alone time completely changed the way he made decisions. Before, he admitted, he was constantly swayed by what others thought, seeking approval, second-guessing himself. But when he started practicing solitude, even just short pockets of it, he began to hear his own voice more clearly. Decisions that once took weeks of hesitation suddenly became easier because he wasn't outsourcing his clarity anymore. That's what emotional independence looks like. It's not about rejection, it's about resilience. It's the ability to say, even if no one agrees, I trust my own compass. Gavrani frames it beautifully. Other people can enrich your life, but they should never be the sole source of your strength. If your sense of worth is always hanging on someone else's approval, you'll always feel fragile. But when you can stand on your own, relationships shift. You no longer cling, you choose. You no longer beg, you share. And here's the lesson she leaves us with. Solitude helps you hear your own voice. And when you can hear your own voice clearly, you can live a life that's aligned. Not just reactive, not just following, but truly your own. Gavrani names creators like Virginia Woolf, who insisted on a room of one's own. She argues solitude nurtures originality. Without the noise of approval or expectation, we get creative. Your mind becomes fertile ground. Let your unfiltered ideas breathe. She proposes small, beautiful rituals, a tea ceremony at dawn, a solo walk without a podcast, talking to yourself, not out loud, but in thought, like a friend asking, what do you need right now? These mini unity moments anchor your inner sanctuary. Chapter 8, Becoming Your Best Friend. Mirror talk isn't cheesy, it's radical. Try facing the mirror and asking, how are you really? No scripts, just presence and kindness. That's where emotional healing begins. Solitude isn't a gap, it's a canvas. She encourages vision mapping, collaging your dreams in solitude, away from noise. What do you actually want, stripped of comparison? You are the artist and the art. She calls it making solitude addictive. You pair it with senses, vanilla, soft music, warm tea, until alone time becomes your comfort zone, not a space you escape from. Let it be a sanctuary, not a punishment. Finally, Gavrani invites emotional integration, being whole with or without others. She's not saying run away. She's saying first, come home to yourself. So what if the hum that fills your home when no one else is around? What if that hum isn't nothing? What if that's the pulse of your own soul waiting for recognition? Solitude isn't a state, it's an ecosystem. It nurtures clarity, creativity, self-trust. If you take one thing away from this, you are your most lifelong relationship. Make it your best. If this resonated with you, I'd truly love to hear what your favorite solo ritual is. Maybe it's sipping your morning tea in silence before the world wakes up, or journaling your thoughts at night when everything finally slows down. Maybe it's a barefoot walk on the grass, a quiet prayer, or simply lying on your back and watching the stars. Whatever it is, share it in the comments below. Reading each other's little rituals might just remind us how beautifully human we all are. And if you'd like more soulful book journeys like this one, don't forget to tap subscribe and hit like. It really helps bring more seekers into this space. You can even share this video with a friend who may be struggling with loneliness right now and who could benefit from seeing solitude not as emptiness, but as quiet power. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. Remember, aloneness doesn't have to feel like absence. It can be a sanctuary, a canvas where you rediscover yourself, a safe place you can always return to. So here's to making peace with silence, to turning solitude into self-love, and to finding strength in the simple act of being with yourself.